It was supposed to be just another ordinary Monday morning at West Hill High. The kind of morning where the coffee still tasted burnt, and the hallways smelled like overused deodorant and secrets no one dared to say out loud. But something in the air felt off, like the tension that coils in your chest before a storm you can't quite see, but you know it's there. Something was going to happen. And deep down, she felt it. Madison Carter stepped out of her father's black Mercedes-Benz SUV with the kind of casual confidence that only money and unspoken power could buy. Her perfectly styled blonde waves bounced with each step on the cracked concrete of the school parking lot. She didn't notice the small things, the torn backpack of the boy walking beside her, the way his shoelace dragged against the pavement, or the slight tremble in his fingers as he held his phone too tight. She didn't notice, because girls like Madison weren't taught to notice boys like Leo Gutierrez. She walked into school like she owned the place, because, in many ways, she did. Her father, Charles Carter, was one of the biggest donors to the district. Her mother chaired every committee. Her last name opened doors before her smile ever needed to. But behind that smile, something darker lingered. Madison wasn't just the pretty girl with the perfect life. She was tired. Tired of the expectations. Tired of pretending. Tired of the voice in her head that whispered she wasn't enough unless she was more. More perfect, more obedient, more cruel. Leo, on the other hand, walked through the same halls like he was invisible, hoping today no one would call him names or ask him if he was lost. His hoodie hid the bruises on his arms from lifting furniture with his uncle over the weekend. His jeans, worn at the knees, told stories no one wanted to hear. Their worlds were never meant to cross. Until they did. The fire alarm went off between third and fourth period. Not the shrill kind from a drill, but the kind that makes your skin tense and your heart jump before your brain can even ask why. Teachers scrambled. Students screamed. The principal shouted into a megaphone that no one could hear. Smoke. Real smoke. Not much. Just enough to cause panic. Just enough to confuse. Just enough to steal. When the alarm ended and students filtered back into the building, there was only one word on everyone's lips. Theft. Mrs. Reynolds' purse. Gone. Along with her wallet, phone, and a gold bracelet passed down from her mother. No one saw anything, or at least no one admitted to it. But someone had to pay. And in the chaos, someone said they saw Leo near her desk. Someone always sees something when they need to. By sixth period, it wasn't just a rumor. It was a sentence. Leo Gutierrez, the scholarship kid from the wrong side of town, had stolen from a teacher during a fire alarm. And like all things that spread too quickly, no one questioned it. Except him. Except Madison. Because Madison was there. She was near the office when it happened. She saw him walk out of the gym, not into the classroom. She saw the security camera, too. The one above the math hallway that pointed straight at the scene of the crime. But no one was talking about that. Not even the school administrators, who suspended Leo before the day ended. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just looked down at the floor like he'd seen it all before. Like this wasn't the first time someone chose to believe a version of the truth that fit their idea of who he was. She should have walked away. Should have let the story pass like all the others. But something wouldn't let her. Something felt wrong. And it wasn't just what happened. It was how easy it had been. How quickly people had turned on someone they barely knew. That night, Madison lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to forget the look in Leo's eyes when the principal accused him. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't even shock. It was exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that comes from being blamed your whole life for things you didn't do. She reached for her phone and opened Instagram, scrolling past filtered smiles and curated lies. But then, in the middle of it all, a single post stopped her cold. A blurry photo of Leo being escorted out of the building by security. Someone had tagged him with the caption, "Caught in the act." Knew he was trouble. The comments were worse. Figures. He never fit in here anyway. Once a thief, always a thief. Bet he only got in with fake documents. Madison felt something twist in her chest, a mixture of rage and shame. Not because of what they said, but because she had once thought the same. She had looked at him once and assumed he didn't belong. She had laughed at a joke someone made about him. She had never spoken to him. Never even cared to. Until now. Until it mattered. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, she did something she had never done in 17 years. She walked to school. Not because she didn't have a ride, but because she needed the time. To think. To plan. To change the ending of a story she knew had been written wrong from the start. When she arrived, the building looked different. Smaller somehow. Less like a kingdom, more like a cage. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She walked straight to the office and asked one question. "Can I see the security footage from yesterday?" The secretary blinked at her like she'd spoken another language. "Why?" Madison's voice didn't tremble. "Because I think Leo Gutierrez is innocent. And I want to prove it." That was the moment everything began to unravel. And it was just the beginning. The silence in the school office felt like the kind that buries truths, sterile, fluorescent, and used to swallowing protests without a sound. Madison stood still, her hands clenched into fists by her sides. The secretary, Mrs. Gaines, adjusted her glasses slowly, scanning Madison's face with a mixture of suspicion and practiced indifference. "Sweetheart," she said, with the tight-lipped smile adults use when they don't intend to take you seriously, "the security footage isn't something we just show to students. That's district protocol." Madison didn't blink. "But this isn't just anything. A kid got suspended. A kid who might be innocent." Mrs. Gaines gave a small shrug and returned her attention to her computer screen. "Then I suggest you talk to Principal Moore. He'll be in after lunch. Now go to class." Madison didn't move. Something inside her, something she hadn't known she carried, began to burn. Not the bratty entitlement that got her out of gym class or excused from assignments. This was different. Sharper. More urgent. This was justice, or at least the beginning of it. She turned and walked out, the hallway swallowing her steps. As she passed the lockers, she felt the stares, not because she was Madison Carter, the pretty, rich girl, but because people had seen her in the office, speaking up for Leo. And speaking up for someone like him, that wasn't neutral. It was dangerous. By the time she sat down in English class, the whispers had already begun. Chloe, her best friend since 6th grade, leaned over with a half-smile and too much mascara. "Are the rumors true?" she asked, not bothering to whisper. "You're defending the thief?" Madison's jaw tightened. "His name is Leo. And he didn't do it." Chloe's laugh was short and sharp, like glass cracking. "You sound like your mom when she talks about the cleaning staff." Madison didn't answer. Not because she didn't have words, but because she was afraid of what they might break if she let them out. That afternoon, she didn't wait for Principal Moore. She intercepted him in the hallway between meetings, planting herself squarely in front of him like a wall he wasn't expecting. "I need 5 minutes," she said. Moore, a man who wore too much cologne and never quite looked you in the eyes, gave a sigh that sounded rehearsed. "Miss Carter, if this is about Leo Gutierrez." "It is." "Then let me assure you, the situation is under control." Madison took a breath, one that tasted like defiance. "If it's under control, why hasn't anyone looked at the camera footage from the math hallway?" He blinked. Not in guilt. In confusion. She saw it. "You didn't know there was a camera there, did you?" she said, quieter now. "But I did. I saw it. Yesterday. It points directly at room 214, where Mrs. Reynolds' purse was stolen. You suspended Leo without even checking." Principal Moore's mouth opened, then closed. His silence said everything. "I want that footage reviewed," Madison continued, voice steady. "And I want it done today." For a moment, she thought he might yell. Might scold her, remind her of boundaries, of authority, of the way the world really works. But instead, he gave her a look she couldn't quite name. Not defeat. Not respect. Something closer to fear. "I'll look into it," he said, brushing past her. And for the first time in her life, Madison realized what fear of truth could do to people in power. That evening, she walked home again. No chauffeur. No tinted windows. Just her, the wind, and a heavy knowledge that something was wrong in the bones of her school. In the way people looked at Leo, in the speed of the accusation, in how fast the system swallowed boys like him whole without chewing. She stopped at a small park bench a few blocks from her house. The sky was bleeding into sunset, the kind of orange that almost hurt to look at. She sat, pulled out her phone, and did what she had never done before. She messaged Leo. Hey. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. But I'm sorry. For everything. I'm trying to help. She stared at the screen, not expecting a reply. Maybe he'd block her. Maybe he'd ignore it. Maybe he'd laugh. But a minute later, the screen lit up. Why? Just that. One word. Heavy. Raw. Because I saw what they did. And I know it's not the truth. A pause. Then another message. They don't care about the truth. They care about being right. Madison felt something shift in her chest. Something she hadn't named yet. Not guilt. Not pity. Something slower. Heavier. Realer. I'm not they. No response this time. Not for a while. And that silence, it hurt in a way she didn't expect. But she understood it. That night, as she sat at the dinner table with her parents, the conversation swirled around campaign fundraisers, property taxes, and a new gym renovation her mother was pushing for. No one mentioned Leo. No one knew what Madison had done. But she couldn't stop thinking about him. The way he looked when they accused him. Like he'd seen it coming. Like it wasn't new. Like he'd been waiting for it. The next morning, when she got to school, something was different. There was a notice on the announcement board in front of the main office. Security footage under review. All disciplinary actions pending verification. She stared at it. Her heart pounded, not from victory, but from something else, the kind of fear that comes when you realize truth isn't the end of the battle. It's only the beginning. Behind her, someone cleared their throat. She turned. Leo stood there. No hoodie. No backpack. Just him. His eyes met hers, steady. "You really pushed for it?" he asked. She nodded. "Why?" The question came again, softer this time. And she didn't know how to answer. Because the truth was, she didn't fully know either. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was justice. Maybe it was the first time in her life she saw a lie and couldn't pretend it wasn't hers to fix. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, Leo said something that cut right through the moment like a blade wrapped in velvet. "Be careful. People like you don't stay on my side for long." Then he walked away. And Madison was left standing there, heart thudding, the truth beginning to pull her into places she never planned to go. Madison didn't expect the weight of his words to stay with her. But they did. "People like you don't stay on my side for long." They echoed not just in her ears, but in the hollow places of her chest, the places she had learned to ignore. Places she had filled with designer brands, filtered friendships, and the artificial flavor of approval. But none of those things had prepared her for Leo Gutierrez. That day, the hallways felt colder. Not physically, but in that quiet way people punish you without saying anything. Eyes shifted when she passed. Whispers trailed behind her like shadows. Even Chloe barely looked her in the eye. Traitor, they didn't say, but felt. But Madison didn't care, or told herself she didn't. Between classes, she walked to the library, where the school's head of security, Mr. Delaney, was reviewing the footage. She stood at the door, waiting, arms crossed like armor. He looked up. "I already spoke with Principal Moore," she said. "I want to know what the cameras showed." Delaney paused the video. His expression didn't soften, but something behind his eyes shifted. Recognition, maybe. That she wasn't just playing hero. That she meant it. It shows your boy never went near the classroom. Not once, he said, voice low, steady. He walked straight to the gym and stayed there the whole time. Madison felt her breath catch. Relief, yes. But more than that, anger. Then why hasn't the suspension been lifted? She asked. Delaney leaned back. Because no one wants to admit they got it wrong. The words hit like a slap. Not because they surprised her, but because they didn't. He turned the screen toward her. The timestamp ran across the top. 10:33 a.m. Leo's figure appeared in the frame, walking calmly down the gym hallway. No panic. No suspicious movement. Just a kid, alone. Not a thief. Not a criminal. Just Leo. Madison stepped closer. Can I have a copy? Delaney shook his head. Not without an official request. You're not family. But what if I show the principal? What if I make noise? Delaney gave a dry laugh. You already are. She left the library with her pulse pounding. This wasn't about doubt anymore. It was about silence. It was about how easy it was for systems to protect themselves, and how hard it was to protect the people they crushed. She sent Leo another message. I saw the footage. It clears you. You didn't do anything wrong. This time, he didn't wait long. I know. That was it. No anger. No joy. No sense of victory. Just quiet confirmation, like someone too used to being accused had stopped hoping people would care about being right. Madison stared at the screen. I want to fix it. Really fix it. Publicly. The reply came slower this time. That's not how this works. They don't care that I didn't do it. They care that I could have. That sentence twisted something deep inside her. Because she knew he was right. She'd lived her whole life around people who didn't need facts to decide what they believed. They needed fear. They needed someone to blame. And Leo had always been easy to point at. Just quiet enough, just different enough, just poor enough to fit the story. But she couldn't let it stay that way. She wouldn't. She walked out of school early that day. No excuse. No lie. She went home, sat at her desk, and opened her laptop. And started writing. Not a post. Not a message. But a statement. A truth. In her words, she wasn't the rich girl defending a poor boy. She was someone who had been wrong, and refused to stay wrong. Someone who had believed the lie, until she saw the evidence for herself. And someone who now dared to make others look, too. When she hit post, her hands trembled. But her voice? Her voice had never felt clearer. The post didn't explode immediately. It just simmered. At first, a handful of comments. A few likes. Then shares. Quiet ones. Cautious ones. But by dinner time, the spark had caught something dry and waiting, and the fire had begun to spread. Madison sat in silence at the dining table while her parents spoke about weekend plans, unaware of the digital storm beginning to surround their daughter. Then her mother's phone buzzed. Once. Twice. 3 times. What on earth? She murmured, unlocking it. Her eyes scanned the screen. Her face changed. Madison, she said, voice tight. What is this? Madison looked up, but didn't flinch. It's the truth. Her father set down his fork. You posted something. I posted what actually happened, Madison replied. That Leo didn't steal anything. That there's footage proving it. That they suspended him without proof. Her mother's lips thinned into a line. You're not a lawyer, Madison. You don't get to decide. No one else did decide, she snapped, her voice sharper than she'd ever allowed it to be at that table. They just assumed. And now everyone's pretending it's too late to fix it. Her father spoke slower. You're not thinking about the big picture. I'm thinking about a boy who got blamed because no one wanted to look past their assumptions. Her mother's phone buzzed again. Her father rubbed his temples. You need to take it down, he said. No. Her mother's voice hardened. This could damage our reputation. Maybe it should. The room fell into a strange kind of quiet, the kind that doesn't come from peace, but from realization. That their daughter wasn't asking permission. That she wasn't playing by the rules anymore. That night, her story reached over 600 shares. And then, 1,000. Students reposted. Parents commented. Former teachers weighed in. Some praised her. Others called her naive. A few accused her of seeking attention. But one comment stayed with her more than the rest. From a girl she barely knew. Brielle, sophomore, on free lunch, almost invisible. You saw him. I've been waiting years for someone to see people like us. Madison stared at the screen, her throat tightening. This wasn't just about Leo anymore. It was about what Leo represented. And now, they couldn't pretend not to know. By the next morning, the school was buzzing in a way it hadn't in years. Teachers whispered in lounges. Students looked at Madison like she had grown a second head, or a spine. Chloe didn't sit with her at lunch. Neither did the others. But Madison didn't care. She sat alone. Until someone sat across from her. Leo. He didn't speak right away. Just looked at her. Not with gratitude. Not even with trust. Just with a kind of weary curiosity. You really lit a match, he said finally. They deserved it, she replied. He nodded. You know it won't fix everything, right? I know, she said. But maybe it starts something. He watched her. Why now? Madison swallowed. Because I used to believe what they did. That silence was safer. That being neutral kept me clean. But it didn't. It made me part of it. And I can't carry that anymore. Leo leaned back. There was no smile. But something softened in his expression. You're different than I thought. So are you, she said. The bell rang. They stood. The cafeteria noise swallowed them again, but now, they weren't invisible. That afternoon, Principal Moore made an announcement over the loudspeaker. After further review, the suspension of Leo Gutierrez has been lifted. We regret the premature decision and will be reviewing our disciplinary procedures moving forward. It was brief, sterile, almost hollow, but it was public, and it was something. As students shuffled through the hallway, Madison caught her reflection in the glass of a trophy case. For the first time in her life, she didn't recognize the girl staring back. And somehow, that felt right. The applause never came. Not the kind from movies, not the dramatic vindication where the hero walks through the hallway and the crowd parts in admiration. That didn't happen. Instead, Madison got stares. Side eyes. Quiet conversations that stopped when she passed. Her post had become bigger than her, and now she was a symbol. Of disruption, of betrayal, of uncomfortable truths people didn't want aired in public. In class, her teachers treated her differently too. Not cruelly. Just cautiously. As if they were waiting to see what she'd expose next. At home, the tension had calcified into something solid. Her mother no longer asked how school was. Her father was buried in meetings, and when they did speak to her, it felt like a negotiation, not a conversation. But the worst part. She felt alone. Not because she had no one, but because, for the first time, she saw everyone too clearly. And that clarity was isolating. The only person who didn't avoid her now was Leo. They didn't talk every day. They didn't text at night like friends in high school dramas. But sometimes, their eyes met across the hallway. Briefly. Quietly. Like two people who had been on opposite sides of glass their whole lives, and had just discovered it could break. One afternoon, Madison found herself walking toward the old basketball court behind the school, the one no one used anymore because the gym was newer, flashier, safer. She didn't know why she went. until she saw him there. Leo. Alone, seated on the court's edge, a tattered book in his lap. She hesitated. He looked up. Their eyes met. She didn't turn away. He nodded toward the empty space beside him. You came. She Saturday. Didn't know I was invited. You weren't, he said. But not harshly. Not unkindly. A pause stretched between them, not awkward, but fragile. Like something was trying to form, and neither of them wanted to break it by speaking too soon. You okay? She asked. Leo exhaled, like the question itself was unfamiliar. Define okay. Not being blamed for something you didn't do. That's a start, right? He gave a small smile, faint and crooked. Maybe. But truth doesn't erase what people felt when they thought it was me. That part stays. Madison nodded. I know. It's like, their belief becomes heavier than the truth. He turned to her. You ever been blamed for something you didn't do? She thought about it. About the years of pretending, the shallow friendships, the pressure to be a version of herself her parents could show off. Not exactly, she said. But I've been praised for things I didn't earn. Which might be worse. Leo studied her. You're not like them, he said quietly. Madison laughed under her breath. I used to be. Maybe I still am. He shook his head. No. They look through people like me. You didn't. You looked at me. The wind picked up slightly, brushing strands of her hair across her face. She didn't move them. She just looked at him. Really looked. He was nothing like the version people painted. There was depth in him. Gravity. A quiet resilience she envied. The kind that wasn't loud or dramatic, but carved into you like tree rings from years of surviving storms. I'm sorry, she said finally. For all the times I looked through you, too. Leo didn't respond right away. But he didn't look away either. After a long moment, he said, Do you think people can really change? Madison looked at her hands. I don't know. But I think they can choose better. Every day. Even if the world tells them it won't matter. Leo nodded slowly. Then maybe we've both already started. They sat in silence again. But this time, it wasn't fragile. It was safe. Real. Like two people learning, step by step, to unlearn everything they'd been taught about who they were supposed to be, and seeing, just maybe, who they really were beneath all of it. The days that followed didn't get easier. The post kept circulating, reaching places Madison hadn't anticipated. Local news blogs, community forums, even a brief segment on a regional radio station. Her name became more than a student ID. It became a headline. And with headlines came opinions. Some praised her courage. Others called it performative. Some parents emailed the school, demanding disciplinary action, not for Leo, but for her. For defamation. For stirring unrest. One even called her a spoiled child trying to play savior. And yet, Madison didn't delete the post. She couldn't. Not now. She didn't do it for applause. She did it because now she knew what silence cost. The school never issued a real apology. No one named the teachers who had rushed to judgment. No one punished the student who falsely claimed they saw Leo near the classroom. But something had shifted. People watched their words more carefully now. And Leo, he came back. Not with fanfare. Not with vengeance. Just quiet presence. He walked the halls like someone who'd learned how to make space for himself where space had never been offered. They didn't become best friends overnight. Madison knew this wasn't a redemption arc tied up in ribbon. They were still too different, still living in worlds that rarely touched, except when they chose to meet in the quiet in-between. But they did talk more. Sometimes in the library. Sometimes on that forgotten basketball court. And sometimes in glances that said more than words ever could. One afternoon, after school, Madison walked into the kitchen to find her mother waiting. Her face unreadable. her phone on the table between them. "You've made quite a name for yourself," she said. Madison didn't answer. Her mother sighed. "I wish you had talked to us before posting. You wouldn't have listened. We would have tried." "No, Mom. You would have reminded me of everything I had to lose. But for once, I needed to ask what someone else had already lost." Her mother's gaze hardened, then, unexpectedly, softened. "He's not like us, Madison." "I know," she said. "And that's the problem." They sat in silence for a long time. Then her mother picked up her phone and left the room. And Madison knew that was as much of an admission as she would ever get. Later that week, Leo passed her a folded paper in the hallway. No words. Just a quick nod. She opened it after school, seated on the steps behind the gym. It wasn't long. "I don't know if people change. But I know I see the world different now. Because of you. Thanks for seeing me." At the bottom, he'd drawn something simple. A tree, roots tangled, branches stretching upward, bending but never breaking. She smiled. She didn't write back. She didn't need to. Some things were already understood. Months passed. The noise faded. The school moved on. But Madison didn't go back to who she was. She joined the student board. She started a peer advocacy group. She spoke up in class when someone made the wrong kind of joke. Not because she liked conflict, but because she finally understood the cost of avoiding it. And Leo. He started tutoring kids who were failing algebra. He stayed quiet, but not small. People noticed him now. Some with admiration. Some with unease. But they noticed. And that was a start. On the last day of the semester, Madison walked past him in the hallway. No words exchanged. Just a glance. But in that moment, something passed between them. Not romance, not closure. Just two people who had once been strangers across an invisible divide. Now, no longer strangers. Not enemies. Just changed. And maybe that was enough. Because sometimes, the biggest revolutions don't come in protests or headlines. Sometimes, they start with a single decision. To see someone. And to not look away. If you liked this story, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.